Loneliness can look in two different ways. You have the physical loneliness where you're isolated, you isolate yourself, you kind of just want to hang out on your own, you don't want to be around other people. And then I think there's also mental loneliness, and that one's the hardest one to see because you still put on that brave face, you put on the mask of happiness. It's only behind like closed doors where you really let yourself realize you feel alone. I feel like that's the most common one that you see in people nowadays. They post the mask, the happy face all over social media, and then you get back home, you're lonely. There's no one who really understands you. In places that are more rural, there's just not as many resources to talk about those things. I think that's something that needs to change. The thing about Roxborough is it's one of those towns where you grow up and you say you always want to leave, and then you always end up coming back. In high school, there's not a lot to do around here when you're a teenager, unless you want to drive an hour away to the mall or something. People come, people go, it gets older, but the town itself stays the same, and I think that's a kind of a sad thing because the world's growing around it, but it's almost like it doesn't grow. It's like an isolation from everywhere else.
Missed out on a lot of things, had a lot going on. All of her classes were online, so I think at that point you're losing those friendships that you had, and you kind of feel like you're not a part of it.
When you're going through something in a small town, they tell you that it's okay to talk about it, but they don't actually mean it. They are almost scared of the idea of opening up about mental health and talking about it. Everyone knows everyone, so something happens, the whole town's gonna hear about it by the end of the week. It's harder to open up when you know everyone else is gonna know your business.
Asheton is very reflective of what a lot of young people in rural America face. There is a huge crisis that is only growing in rural America as it relates to teens. 1 out of every 5, or 20%, of teenagers seriously contemplated suicide. In rural areas, you are taught from the time you're a little kid to be self-sufficient and not to ask for help, and certainly not to talk about things that are so uncomfortable, like mental illness.
Everyone's just sitting there not talking about it, bottling it up, and I think that's creating this sense of isolation for everyone. You think you're the only one going through it because no one's talking about it. At some point, you have to break the cycle of push down your feelings, push away these thoughts, don't have the conversation unless you really, really need to, which for most places, it's never. This generation of people, they're the ones who are gonna grow up and lead the world. Especially in rural areas where you don't really have the support or the resources, I think it's more important than ever to start with the younger generations and let them know that this isn't gonna go away. This is something we have to talk about. You keep letting them know that they have you to confide in. If we build off of each other, if we really come together as not just a generation, but as a community, then things can start to change.
Rural Minds is a nonprofit organization. Our vision is to eventually end the stigma, the suffering, and the silence that's inherent in mental illness in rural areas. By working with existing organizations such as Pfizer and the National Grange, we have been able to much more quickly shed light on the growing issue of mental illness in rural America.
If I had one message for parents of kids facing mental health challenges, support them through the process, because it's not easy for the parents, it's not easy for the kids, but there has to be team effort and support. Assure them that they're wanted, they're loved, they're part of your family, they're part of the community. Get them the help that they need as much as you can.
In North Carolina, the best thing is probably our sunsets, the pinks, the purples. It's just magical, and it kind of made our small little town feel a lot bigger. and it's just serene and it's quiet, and you realize, hey, this might not be so bad.